Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's North Carolina Botanical Garden Lunchbox Talk. We're thrilled to be joined by Ashlie Thomas today. My name is David Michaud, and I serve as our Program and Engagement Coordinator at the Garden, and I'm joined by Cindy Fury, our Youth Environmental Education Specialist. We'll be supporting our online audience behind the scenes on Zoom, and we'll return at the end of the program to help with the Q&A. For those of you joining here in person, if you can just hold your questions till the end of the talk, we'll bring a microphone around to you so that everyone here in the room and online can hear clearly. I'd like to move on to introducing our speaker today. Ashlie Thomas, the Mocha Gardener, is an author of How to Become a Gardener, available for sale at our garden shop, and a home gardener and nutrition scientist who believes growing food is one of the most important, most powerful ways to nourish ourselves, our communities, and our future. Her work has been featured by Better Homes and Gardens, NPR, NBC News, and other national outlets, and shares how gardening can be a tool for wellness, self-reliance, and reconnection with food, land, and community. With over a decade of experience in scientific research, food security advocacy, and applied health promotion, Ashlie brings a unique lens to her work. As a certified health coach, she's supported individuals managing chronic conditions like diabetes and hypertension. At the heart of her work is the belief that health is a human right and that nutritious food, a healthy environment, and shared knowledge should never be a privilege. This conviction shapes her hands on approach in local community gardens, where she develops and leads programs that integrate sustainable growing practices, culturally relevant nutrition education, and ecological awareness. Ashlie serves on the board of directors for the Green Rural Redevelopment Organization and holds a master's degree in food and nutritional sciences from North Carolina A&T State University. She's currently pursuing her PhD in nutrition at the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, where her research explores public health and sustainable agriculture to create practical, equity-focused food system solutions. She lives with her husband on their homestead in Sedalia, North Carolina, where they're building a home, stewarding the land, and growing good food all year long. Ashlie, thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you take it away.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I know some of you saw my little knee brace. I'm okay. I'm okay. All right. I had a little injury working on building our house, but all is well. Give me 1 second. I'm Ashlie. It's always weird to hear introductions about yourself. Ultimately, I'm a gardener, and I take pride in being a land steward. Today, I'm going to talk about from soil to sovereignty, exactly what that means, and also some evidence around, how to define some of these concepts and why it should be important to all of us. So, I want to pose a question to you guys. And before, let me just level set. Yes, I'm talking to you guys, but I like to become family with people very fast. So I hope that this is a dialogue. I hope that you guys can feel welcome to, ask any questions along the way. I'm happy to answer them, and we just have a good time. Okay. So my question to you is, how might gardening change not just what we eat, but also how we see our relationship with the earth, with each other, and ourselves? Does anyone have a question or a response to that?
I would say coming from a family of gardeners, so when we gardened, we would cooperate with other gardeners and exchange an overabundance of something. So in that way, you're collaborating with each other, and you're also providing a wide variety of nutritional of foods for each other.
You said your name was Sandy, right? Sandy, I think you did all my whole presentation, so I don't think we need to do anything from here. No, that's great. Anybody else?
I don't need a microphone, do I?
For the online folks.
Oh, hi, online folks. Um, I think when the weather cooperated, I used to take produce into work.
Mm.
I also put out a table to take what you want in my neighborhood. There are about 45 homes there. And constantly exchanging plants from the garden group I'm a member of. And just experimenting with everything.
Yeah. I'm hearing collaboration. I'm hearing just community sharing, diversity of foods. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mary, and I just want to say simply, it connects you back to the earth. It makes you more observant to everything going around you as you're in that space, as you're digging your hands in the soil,
Mm.
as you're watching what happens when you do this or you do that. So for me, it's more about connection.
Excellent. That's perfect. And I'm going to give you guys opportunities to share some more of your perspective as well, because garden is not just a me thing. It's a we thing. Oh, this is also my garden and a salad that I prepared. I know it looks really like a stock photo, but it was for the magazine. It was a salad that I prepared with produce from the garden that you see here. So I wanted to highlight this because, this is where we initially started, this blank space that you see over to the left, and then these wooden garden beds that my talented husband built for us to begin our garden. So you see nothing but lawn, right? There's not a lot of diversity in terms of, vegetation. And if you're like a horticulturalist, you'll look at this and say, I see millions of things, and I do too. But in terms of what we have produced from our garden, that is not present. So this was what we were working with, just a blank canvas. And ultimately, over time, we built this. This was in our first season. So we brought in tomatoes, we brought in medicinal herbs, and I call this space an octagarden. It looks really unique, but it was three octagons connected together, and that served as our culinary and medicinal herb garden. And then over time, we brought in other structures. And so this is another picture of my garden right there in the top left corner. We were growing vertically, just trying different methods for really incorporating just different types of crops and herbs and flowering plants, pollinators. And so we evolved over time. This didn't happen overnight. And then, of course, we, had to have a place to process all of this stuff because I was sharing a lot of this produce, growing it not just for my household, but other households as well. Sharing is caring, really and truly. It's no fun if you're growing all of this stuff for yourself and not able to, share with others. So, a little, thing that I asked for from my husband, it was just a little spot. And of course, him being a builder, he went all the way, was extra, and built this, what we called a she shed. I'm not complaining, okay? I'm not complaining. And this is my husband right here. And so we did this together over a span of like 6 years. And then this is my family. This is really my why. We all have a why for what we want to do with gardening, like what got us here. And really, the health of my family is what prompted me to explore greater diversity in foods, creating spaces that could, foster greater wellness, not just for myself, but also for those who I love. So you see my family here. And then we have a greenhouse for where we were growing year round and all of these things. So it looks fancy, right? And then you see this thing to the right. You're like probably thinking, what is that? That was my first garden, y'all. And I love this picture so much because if you are a gardener, many of you are, you mentioned that, you look at this and say, wow, I wonder if that glass jar has drainage. It didn't. Okay, it did it. I overseeded things. You see the cilantro is leggy, the thyme is so small, and it looks like, is it getting enough sun? Clearly not. But I was so excited to see seeds germinating, and that was my beginning. And I'm going to bring this back up why this is important, because we don't all start from this that you see in the top left corner. Sometimes we start from what you see in the bottom right corner. So this is some of the harvest that we produced from our garden over the years. I mean, we were growing a wide variety of things, not just giant, those beefsteak tomatoes, but we were growing different types of cherry tomatoes. We've got vintage wine, Kellogg's breakfast. We grew some marigolds, brought in, what is this? Eucalyptus, bell peppers, and we were growing this type of stuff, just exploring, seeing exactly what would be complementary to our climate And if we found that it grew well here, that's what we tried. And I'm going to go into what some of our motivation was for growing these things later on in this presentation. And of course, you see eggs. We had chickens, well, we have chickens, and with those chickens, we were able to produce, a lot of, protein in terms of eggs. We did not eat the chickens, but this was very helpful. And of course, we were producing this before, everything went crazy. The whole egg pandemic, like the egg crisis, where everyone was fighting for their lives. We could have probably made a lot of money, but yes, we were producing our own. Yes.
Given you were both working or in school,
Yeah.
who took care of the watering,
Yeah, we did.
the harvesting,
We did.
and the cooking?
We did. We did. Um, and I say we did because, obviously, that's our space. It was in the back of our home. So we just made time for it. And it's tough. It is a lot of work, hence why we were sharing. That's a lot to take on by yourself. But when you bring in community, which I'm going to talk a little bit later on, when you bring in community, you help to spread that burden just a bit more. So this space was not only just for us, but it eventually evolved into a space that my family came to, my friends, my colleagues, community members came in to just help to receive vegetables. They wanted to be a part of it. So I want to talk about why gardening matters today. Well, gardening has mattered technically for centuries now, but why does it matter today? Well, we see this rise in chronic health problems. I know many people, a lot of folks are, this all the rage right now. Chronic disease prevention, chronic diseases, and honestly, you guys, the prevalence of that is high. So yes, it is a very real problem. We see things like diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and obesity, and not just here locally and in North Carolina, but globally. This is a big issue. And what we know is that these diseases are oftentimes influenced by not just environmental factors, but what we eat and the quality of what we eat. So gardens have the ability to produce some of those produce items that we might be lacking or lacking access to help. I'm not going to say it's going to completely prevent it, but it could help with prevention or with management of these conditions. Then we've got something called food deserts and food swamps. And these are areas where fresh and nutritious foods are kind of scarce. About 23.5 million people in the United States live in low access food areas. And that is really what these food deserts and food swamps are. Let me ask you, who's heard of the word food swamp or food desert? Who's heard of the word food swamp? I've been really advocating for the use of that term because Monica White and many different advocates in this space, in this food system space and food justice space, have really talked about why it's important to differentiate what a desert is and what a swamp is. A desert, in its connotation, indicates or would seem as if there is no food at all or is void of life. And that can be negative if you've got a community of people living, calling this place home. So it's not necessarily void of, of assets of life. It's just not, it doesn't have enough of the nutritious foods. And that's where we get to food swamps. Food swamps, on the other hand, I'm going to define this later on. It's an entirely different environment. Your environment has a lot of foods, but the quality of the foods is not necessarily nutrient dense. So you don't have a lot of options available to you to really get the nutrients that you need, the macro and micronutrients that you need every day. And so now we go into the grassroots and these cost-effective solutions, which is gardening. And I know you guys are probably saying cost-effective. It can be, yeah, it can be. And over time, we have to think about, what does cost mean? Yes, there's money, there's time, there's resources, but what is the cost of not having the nutrients and the nutrition that you need? So these grassroots efforts, like gardening initiatives, help to improve that access to fresh produce, and it also encourages healthier eating habits and a deeper connection, like you said, to our food systems. So I was having a conversation. I was trying not to share too much before this presentation, but I wanted to talk about soil health. What, like, I believe in starting with the fundamentals. How do we get good food, right? And a lot of times we think it's coming from produce, but let's go back before then. Let's talk about where food comes from, and that is the soil. So, soil health means soil that works as a living system and it supports plants, animals, and the people. And that includes all of the minerals, all of the organisms, the organic matter, the water, the air, all of these things that play into soil health, and of course, the microbiome. But one third of the world's soil is degraded due to issues or challenges with erosion, chemical pollution, compaction, and really loss of organic matter. A lot of this has been due to our agricultural practices, especially on a larger scale, these commercial agricultural practices depleting the soil of nutrients. And that diminishes its ability to produce this nutritious foods that we need. So ultimately, healthy soils not only hold water, but they hold the nutrients and they store carbon and they help plants to actually become more resilient and further fostering a more resilient ecosystem. So, this soil microbiome explained. I'm going to tell you guys, I'm in nutrition. I am so far removed from like metabolomics and anything with microbiology, but very high level, I will say that there are billions of microorganisms just within a small sample of soil. And these microorganisms are driving those essential cycling processes that keep soil healthy. One of these species, which is is a bacterial species, it's the rhizobium bacterial species that actually fixes some of that atmospheric nitrogen and makes it more accessible to plants. So imagine all of these things are at play. So if you are, if your air is affected, if there's pollution, how does that interplay with the microorganisms in the soil? It's going to make it more challenging, right? It's going to make some of these nutrients that these microorganisms need. It's going to make and I'm sorry for the typo. I see it's not a period and a comma. It's just going to make it very challenging for these microorganisms to flourish. Then we've got these mycorrhizal fungi. This is so important if many of you have let your soil sit for a long time, and as it's decomposing, if you've taken a scoop and you've seen what looks like this little network of roots, but it's really fungi. That's very important because it has a mutualistic association with plant roots. This is what's going to help to extend the root system of the plants, and it allows absorption of the nitrogen and nutrients like zinc and copper to really be uptaken by the plant. So when you see that, that's a good thing. Also, we've got some of these beneficial microbes that produce very helpful bioactive substances that help to keep these pathogens at bay. Um, I'm going to talk about how we've seen that in our garden and what that looks like exactly. But this helps with plant immunity and the growth of these plants. So you might be asking right now, what does this have to do with the nutrition? Well, if the foundation of your soil is not optimal, imagine when you're coming in with your crops, how that will be impacted. We want the best, the most nutrients that we can get out of our edible crops when we put that into the soil. And oftentimes we think, let me just put some fertilizer on it. Let me just, spray it with some neem oil, spray it with these things. But really, if the foundation is not well, then our plant will not be well. And if our plant is not well, our food will not be well. So we also see here, I think that's kind of really further talking about more of, or explaining more of what I was speaking about. But how does this relate to human health? Well, we know that these diversity of microbes may train the immune system. And I'm using words like may because One thing I've learned in research is we don't want to be so definitive, okay? We don't have all the specifics. And honestly, there's a research gap, and we could learn more about how does this play in or influence our immune system even more. So it may train our immune system to be better adapted to, just exposure to microbes. And then we've got this exposure. It builds tolerance and is shown to help to really increase the chances of you developing fewer allergies in over time. I will say I did not grow up, even though I grew up like playing outside, I did not grow up playing in the soil. And that was just kind of a thing that my family just said, don't get dirty, you know? But now that I am able to, and I told my mother, I can do what I want now. I said, I get dirty every chance that I can get. And the younger you are able to be exposed to those microbes, there is a higher likelihood that you can help to train your immune system so that you're developing a bit more resilience in terms of your health. And so this little baby hand that you see is my nephew. And he was really curious about the soil. And we used that opportunity to kind of teach him, uh, to have a little close up and personal lesson about what soil is. And he called it dirt. And there's and especially in the gardening space, we often say dirt is like a food desert, right? It's void of, of nutrients. It's void of the living organisms that will help it to be conducive to growing diverse plants. But here you can see I had to teach them the difference between, dirt and soil that is living, soil that is moist, soil that is holding a lot of life and that's optimal for plant growth. So we see that gardening could increase this microbial exposure, but also interestingly, because I don't know if any of you live in the city, how often are you able to come in contact with soil? You know, just yeah, you can walk on it, but how often are you playing with it, interacting with it, engaging with it, observing the differences? So unfortunately, urban lifestyles tend to have a limited microbial contact, but it's not to say that you can't get more exposure. And hopefully, with this conversation, we understand how we can do that. Here we talk about the nutrient density. So we know that healthy soil microbes enhance the bioavailability of nutrients like iron and zinc and manganese, and that makes it easier for the roots to actually absorb these nutrients into the plant. We also know that soils that are rich in organic matter hold nutrients more effectively. They maintain moisture. And I wanted to kind of mention, have any of you seen that red clay? A lot of folks, will say, "Oh my God, I hate it." I don't hate it. I've grown to love it. It's actually quite fertile. It has a lot of nutrients in it. Is it easy to grow a lot of things in? No, it's not. So oftentimes to make it easier for us to grow in that type of soil, we amend it with things like compost, with more organic matter to help it to become loose, to really feed those microorganisms within the soil. Next, we've got the mycorrhizal fungi that I was speaking about that increases the plant's root access to nutrients like the phosphorus. This is because the plant is able to take in or uptakes these nutrients more effectively, that is what's increasing the nutrient density in these plants, especially in the nutrient poor soils or in the tough soils like our red clay here. Next, we've got this regenerative agriculture and how that plays into really fostering greater soil health and ultimately really looking at the nutrient density of plants. Regenerative agriculture, and sometimes that's a newer term, but what the overarching concept is sustainable. We need more sustainable systems. Sustainable agriculture studies confirm that crops grown in biologically active and well-managed soil contain 20 to 30% more antioxidants vitamins, and phenolic compounds that could be beneficial and have been shown to be beneficial to human health. So now we go into the sustainable or regenerative gardening practices. We had a nice discussion about what that looks like. How many of you are familiar with compost? Excellent. How many of you actually engage in composting? Yeah. What's your favorite part about composting? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Anybody? Worms, yeah. They appear out of nowhere sometimes, and it's amazing to me. Isn't that fascinating? Anything else? My favorite part, yes, please.
So I've done it many different ways and had lots of issues and challenges. And luckily, I can take mine now to the farmer's market.
Yeah.
And Compost Now takes care of it for
Wow.
me. So I'm grateful for that service, but I know
Yeah.
many people don't have that service.
This is very true. And sometimes when we think about compost, we think about that bin that we often see on like pictures. It's like the three bin system. No, we also have a composting system right inside of our home. And really, the importance of that is to really just kind of cycle that waste. It allows the produce that we're growing to be broken down back into organic matter, carbon for the soil to feed those microorganisms. So now you're seeing this cycling, right? This nutrient cycling. Composting helps to enrich that microbial diversity in our soil. Then we've got things like cover crops. I remember kind of first learning about cover crops a few years ago and how you can start to rejuvenate or regenerate your soil, bringing in these no cash crops, meaning that you're not looking to sell it or truly use it in a way for like human consumption or anything, but really to just rejuvenate and to allow your soil to replenish itself. And so uh, one thing that I've seen that I've used is red clover or different types of clover to really help to fix the nitrogen in the soil and also to help mitigate erosion. When your soil is resting, you need you need that root system that's going to keep structure to your soil, and cover crops are a great way to do that. Then we've got things like rotating your crops. And that's important because it helps to kind of disrupt kind of this pest life cycle, and it improves the use of nutrients by each of these crops. But it also helps to further promote that microbial diversity. And when I say rotating your crops, if you have crops growing in a certain location, you don't want to continue to grow your crops there in that same location. Diversify it, switch it up, bring something else in. And there's a science to that as well, because some plants require a bit more nitrogen from the soil. So if you bring in and rotate with plants that provide a bit more nitrogen in return, that creates a cycle that helps with the nutrient cycle for your soil. And then, of course, we've heard of no-till gardening. I hope we've heard. If you haven't, that simply means you're not digging up and disturbing the soil every time you want to plant or anytime you want to change over your crops. Yes.
Um, a long time ago, I was a USDA soil conservationist,
Yeah.
and we were starting to push no-till farming. And one of the things, it's not an agency I stayed in, one of the things I objected to was how much pesticide and herbicide use they were pushing for no-till farming.
Mm.
Does that come in with no-till gardening too?
That's so good. So this is what I was talking about earlier. We really had a nice conversation before this presentation. We covered a lot of topics, y'all. One thing about this organic gardening concept is a spectrum, right? Some folks will bring in a bunch of inputs to keep weeds at bay, especially with the no-tilling. The concept is the premise behind no-tilling is to allow the weeds to grow. Do not disrupt the soil, be mindful of the soil underneath the surface, and tend to, your weeds by pulling them. And so a lot of folks, growers, farmers, gardeners, producers will bring in things like pesticides or herbicides to address that on the surface, but still they're not tilling. And that's a problem, because if whatever you bring into the soil, it's going to permeate down underneath the surface. So it's kind of counter to what, this new no-till movement is supposed to be about. You were going to say something? Okay, excellent. Did I answer your question? Semi.
Not as much as you could in this context, yeah.
Okay. We can talk about it maybe afterwards as well. Gardens as mini ecosystems. And so what you see here are all of these pictures are from my garden. This is a bee on a female squash plant. As you can see, it's just getting all of the pollen on it. But these diverse plantings enhance populations of pollinators like our bees, butterflies, moths, that, and they're going to contribute to approximately 75% of crop pollination worldwide. So imagine, so now we've talked about the soil. If your soil is well, your plants will be well. If your plants will do well and grow well or develop optimally, it's going to bring in the pollinators, right? And if you've got some diversity within the plants that you're able to grow because of your soil, then you're going to get diverse pollinators and organisms starting to come. And so now we're starting to form a mini ecosystem within our own area. And this is important because without the pollinators, how are you going to get food? So without my friend, the bee, this bee needs to go over to the male, or it's coming from a male flower, bringing the pollen and fertilizing the stamen that you see. But that is what's going to produce the fruits or the foods. And so we also have, I'm trying to remember if this is a ladybug or a lady beetle. I got to look up closely to see it. But either way, both of them are predators to pests like aphids. Raise your hand if you love aphids. No hand should raise. Oh, you love aphids? Really?
To those beach tree aphids right now,
Yeah.
dance when you touch the branch.
That sounds scary. Okay.
Dr. Seuss.
Okay, yes. So we've got these, yeah.
I kind of thought you were going to talk about how these pollinators are really suffering from extreme heat and
Yeah.
extreme moisture. And I just said temperatures over maybe 94, 95, the bees won't pollinate.
Yeah, yeah. So that gets into kind of climate change, potentially its effect on organisms, right? Because that also impacts soil health as well, right? So if you've got where you're not getting water, water is needed by every organism on Earth. So if you're not getting enough water, that's going to impact the health of your soil, the microbiome, the microorganisms, but also all of the things involved with our ecosystem. So water is very important. And if we are experiencing drought-like conditions, which we are experiencing more of as the years go by, that is in turn going to have some deleterious effects on soil, on our pollinators, and every other organism, in that food chain as well, including us.
Yes.
So we know that increasing this biodiversity will stabilize soil moisture and these microclimates, thus improving garden resilience to the droughts and environmental stress that we're starting to see as a result of, more severe climate crises. So I wanted to show you guys a little something from my garden. So we've got some echinacea here, and of course, here's my friend the bee again. It's not the same bee, but remember, when we started, we had nothing but that lawn. We didn't see many bees at all. We actually didn't see a lot of insects, period. We definitely didn't see, the butterflies and some of the other organisms I'm going to show you. And so we started to see just within 2 seasons, a shift in the types of organisms that came into just into our garden. We've got these the swallowtail butterflies that love lavender. We've got our passion fruit and different types of honeybees. And I know we look at these bees and just think, one thing I noticed is that there were different species of bees that were also coming into our garden. We had the bumblebees, and we had, I don't know, I'm not a beekeeper yet. Not a beekeeper yet. But we saw different types of bees, and that was that was special for us to see, like, where did you guys come from? We were clearly creating a haven that fostered greater diversity. We also started to see the birds, different types of birds. I want to be a birder. That is like one of my life's missions. For right now, I just look at the birds and I'm so fascinated by them. But we found that organisms like birds were creating havens inside of our garden for food and nesting. And I just thought that that was incredible. And we also saw, some of these organisms like the praying mantis entering in. I've never seen a praying mantis in our yard before, but they found, safety in this place. And of course, we started to foster, or we wanted to see more of them. So we grew plants that would welcome our swallowtail caterpillars that you see here, the turtles, which are my favorite, coming from out of nowhere. We kept a nice, moist environment. So they say that, bring out the food and the masses will come. I'm sure I'm messing up that quote, but that's exactly what happened here. So we look at home gardening and diet diversity. So now we're moving along this pipeline. We talked about soil health. We talked about nutrient diversity and density in the plants. But how does gardening relate and influence dietary diversity? A recent study actually showed that gardening home, there were 2 studies, that gardening at home and through your community led to a 25 to 63% increase in fruit and vegetable consumption. Also, cultivating these culturally mindful or meaningful crops in the garden significantly increase the likelihood of you actually consuming it, but also actually liking to eat the stuff. All right, this is a safe place, y'all. Let's be honest with one another. How many of us eat everything from our gardens? Yeah. You're blessed. You're blessed. It's difficult, right? It's difficult to sometimes consume everything that we grow, especially if we don't know what to do with it. And one thing that I found in my work is that every time, like anytime we were in community gardens, the excitement of growing all of the things sometimes resulted in us not eating all of the things. And it was simply a time issue. It was a knowledge issue. It was I don't even know what this is. I was just excited to grow some stuff. But when we connect with the things and we grow the things that mean something to us, and we'll talk about that a bit more, there's a higher likelihood of us actually consuming it. And so then we talk about, some of these studies talk about how homegrown produce tends to have lower pesticide residues, since gardeners are typically, potentially, avoiding some of those synthetic chemicals or they use them sparingly. What I found is that, remember, this term organic is a spectrum, right? The more you grow, the more you know, you learn more about what it is that you should and I'm not going to say shouldn't, but what might not be best to bring into these growing spaces. And over time, you start to see when you're that close to the soil, to the land, you learn about the land and you want to be mindful of your place in disrupting the land. After all, we did not create it. We are simply stewards of it. Oh, and by the way, this is my other nephew. He was trying a fresh carrot from the garden for the first time. He didn't know how carrots grew, so that was a very special moment. So these are some concepts that I think that it's important to know. Food security. I'm sure that we've all heard this term being kind of thrown around, and it's one of those terms that folks are talking about a lot lately. But it's basically a situation where all people at all times have physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious foods that meet their dietary needs and food preferences for an active, healthy life. That is a loaded definition. And it took many, many years for them to come up with that. Because what does it mean for you to truly be fulfilled and fed to live a healthy life? And this is a great definition for what that means. Then you've got the food desert, and this is what I was explaining earlier. This is basically an area where people have limited access to a variety of healthy and affordable foods. So if you had to imagine, food desert is like the umbrella term. And then right under that, you've got something called a food swamp, which are environments that are saturated with unhealthy foods, and that's not my definition. So these are unhealthy foods because of the large number of corner stores and fast food outlets in them. And when they say unhealthy, that's typically foods that do not have a robust, quantity of those micro and macronutrients that we need every day. So this could look like, the potato chips, right? We've heard about ultra processed foods, right? But let me explain that. That just means that there has been several processes that have made this food, it turned that potato into something that was a bit more shelf stable, and it's able to it's able to be stored longer term due to things like, preservation methods, increasing the salt, frying it, adding in some of your preservatives to keep that stable. And then we've got food sovereignty, which is what we're going to talk about next. And this is the right of people to healthy and culturally appropriate foods produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food in agricultural systems. And when we think about food sovereignty, we often think about indigenous practices. What what did our ancestors, what did our indigenous family members, our indigenous friends and family traditionally do to eat well? So, connecting all of these concepts, we've got food security. And this is where sovereignty, security, and safety come into play. If you don't have these things, can you truly be food secure? You have to have safety. Your food has to be free of contamination and degradation. You have to be empowered to be able to make your own choice, have autonomy to understand what you're eating, to know where it comes from and how it was produced. If you don't know that, are you truly sovereign when it comes to your food? And then security, what we've talked about, being able for all people, because remember, I firmly believe that food is a right, good food, nutritious food, and health is a right for everyone. But if even just the one of us is not well and not getting what we need, how well are we doing as a society? How secure are we as a society? So we've got gardens' roles in food security. This on the right is an example of a food desert or a food swamp. And these gardens, we've often seen, community gardens come into these spaces, and Detroit is doing a great job with turning kind of these abandoned lots and even some of these blighted communities into plots that are vibrant and filled with vegetation, greens, and food to feed the communities. But what gardens can do is to help reduce that reliance on some of these food options that are saturated in these communities. It gives you a greater choice. It gives you more options to choose. Then we've got my friend here, and some of you might know Farmer Howard from Faithful Farms here in Chapel Hill. We know that gardens can build social capital through food sharing networks and mutual support groups, and it creates community resilience, especially during the time of food supply disruption. And I showed Farmer Howard because he does a lot of work here locally, if you're interested, in making sure that not only is food being produced and distributed locally, he sells in Weaver Street Co-op and some other markets, but he's also making sure that it is the food that people, feedback from the community that they've said that they've wanted, feedback from the local market that they've said that they've wanted, that that food is being produced and distributed to the people. So farmers and growers like Howard are important for us to be able to translate our preference into actual action. So we've got, what is the purpose of food sovereignty? Like, why is this even important right now? And I think you guys are starting to get it, right? It emphasizes that, we can maintain that resilience and that cultural heritage through preserving our seeds. Oftentimes we think like, how do we preserve foods? I'm going to can it, I'm going to dehydrate it. But before we even get there, they come from our seeds, right? And one thing that I've enjoyed learning how to do over time, over the years, is saving seeds from our heirloom plants. I've got different types of okra, and I'm going to show you guys a little bit like why that's culturally relevant to me. But different types of okra through a wonderful project, the Experimental Farm Network, that has been really committed to preserving, our heirloom vegetables, especially things that grow well here, but that have been lost over time due to just the rise in some of our industrial producers in our larger supermarkets taking a priority over certain species. So we're all familiar with the Clemson, yes, I think it's the Clemson spineless. But I'm growing many different types of varieties of okra, many different colors, and many of them vary in their tolerance to our climate as well. So seed saving. Then we've got these agribusiness models that can resist, or, we've got these small scale farmers that are trying to go against some of these industrialized agribusiness models. And they're, unfortunately, and it might not be their intent, these industrial agribusinesses, it might not be their intent to disrupt our ecosystems, but they are. They are. And so what are we doing? We're trying to take that back, take back that power. And people like organizations like my friends over at Grow in Henderson, North Carolina, are not just are not just producing locally in gardens, and they've expanded to working with the local farmers in the area, but actually being a part of that distribution through their local, their mobile farmers market, getting food, local foods out to people, and really helping our small scale farmers. Then we've got that food sovereignty can empower these communities to ensure that their food systems and food production respects culture, ecosystems, and livelihoods. One thing that has been devastating to see is some of our small farmers being outcompeted by our larger commercial farmers. How can you enter into the market if you're not producing enough? So there has to be a way for us to support our local farmers, because they, remember, like Farmer Howard and so many others, they're growing based upon what we want, what we, the people, are saying. Yes? So then we've got the food sovereignty and health equity. This food sovereignty, even more has, a lot of people are waking up and realizing, like, wait, not everyone has the foods that they need. Wait, do I have the foods that I need regularly? And how easy is it to get to those foods? So this is particularly important in marginalized groups that we've seen kind of this disparity in health magnified. But food sovereignty practices have shown that it could improve dietary patterns, but also diversity And ultimately, down the line and over time, if we continue those habits, it is shown to reduce chronic disease risks. And then we've got food sovereignty enables these communities to challenge these structural inequities that we're seeing in not just land access, but also economic power and food availability through grassroots efforts like gardening, like community gardens, growing in our own backyards, but also being able to inform local policies, not just within our cities, but in our states and hopefully in our countries. And with the new political changes that are in play, this is not a political talk, so I'm not going to go that deeply into it, but I think that it's ripe for us being able to say exactly what issues we are finding in our food systems and how we can solve them, locally, starting on a local level. We can start right in our backyard. And so the last thing here is being mindful of food sovereignty in this greater discussion of health equity allows us to preserve some of these traditional and indigenous food knowledge and practices, but it also supports our cultural identity. One thing that I wanted to mention is, what that looks like for me. When we lose touch with the things that are deeply meaningful to our identity, we lose touch with ourselves. And I think that that is very evident of how disconnected we can become from the things that have nourished our ancestors to the things that are nourishing us, and how in turn that impacts us being able to move in life. So we know that as an individual, food sovereignty allows us to grow the foods that matter to us. It gives us potentially greater autonomy. On a community level, it allows communities to share the decision and the tools and the foods and to really protect those foodways. And this is important because my friends in Greensboro, this is PDYNF, it's a community garden, and they are doing phenomenal work in terms of food security, food sovereignty, and addressing the needs of the community in East Greensboro. It's a faith-based organization, but they are working with the broader community to ensure that people's voices are heard and bellies are fed. So we know that more food option can help us to get stronger networks, not just within our communities, but it also helps us to be more resilient as individuals, but also as a community. So here are some examples of things that I grew in my garden that helps to promote and foster greater food sovereignty. And these are cultural things, but you might find these things relate to your culture and your identity or your preference as well. So we've got the okra, and I grew some burgundy okra. My family's from the South. They're from South Carolina and New Orleans, Louisiana. And one thing that we like to do is make gumbos, okay? We like fried okra that you can see right here. We like grilled okra. I like okra raw. I am probably going to turn into an okra. And these things are very important to us because these are recipes that have been passed down, especially our gumbo recipe from my great-grandmother. These are things that have been passed down over generations to us, and it keeps us rooted in who we are, where we come from, and that in itself speaks about the resilience of a people that we are. Then we've got this hibiscus, and this is the calyxes of the hibiscus red sorrel plant. And what we do with this is make teas. We dry it, and we make a delicious tea filled with vitamin C and different antioxidants in them. And then we've got our collard greens and our mustard greens. It's a southern delicacy. I don't know if any of you guys like greens, but this is a staple for us, highly nutritious, and it grows very well here in our climate. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was really kind of an effort of what this empowerment looks like in communities. This is Morriltown Community Garden in Burlington, North Carolina. And what's so interesting about Morriltown is that this is right here in the left top corner is Miss Lydia Jones. Miss Lydia Jones founded this group in this community garden as a result of gun violence. Her son, she lost her son to gun violence a few years ago, and she wanted to see a change in her community. She wanted to create an environment, a place that felt safe, that the community could come together, work together, and to heal. And so she created the Morriltown Community Group, and it was more than just a garden. They were addressing several different things like environmental factors in the community as well. But due to a needs assessment, folks they said, hey, it would be great to have like a community space, like a community garden. And so her, along with the other city leaders and town members, built this garden in collaboration with some other partners around the city or around the county. And so what you see here is the purpose was to get youth out there to teach them how to garden, how to grow foods, to understand exactly where their food was coming from. And you can see they've partnered with students who are local to Burlington, near Burlington. That's Elon University. They've been there for years, helping out and supporting, growing, taking care of the garden, or helping to take care of the garden each year. And this is me with them, and we were working and fixing the bed and being a part. So you might say, how did I get involved? I drove past them one day and I said, that looks like a fun place. And I knew that I, I wanted to connect with my community and connect with like-minded folks. And I've been working with them for the past 3 years. Another thing that we did at Morriltown over time was that we started to listen to hear what the community wanted, right? We didn't go in and say, hey, I'm going to make everything better for you. No, that's a great way to, not develop a relationship with the community. But over time, we started to listen to what they needed. And one thing that we heard was that folks need to know what to do with the foods. We just talked about that, right? We need to increase nutritious foods, yes, but our kids, we need something for them to do because they're susceptible to joining gangs and getting into situations that they don't need to be in. We also need support in helping them to learn how to read, so literacy. And my colleagues and I, this is Dr. Scott Morrison over at Elon University. If you are on this call, Scott, hey. And Emily Ecker, who is an undergrad in public health, we work together to really work with the community leaders to really understand exactly what can we do to make to kind of translate this into something formal for students using our talents all together. So we partnered with them and we designed this program called Rooted Together, and it was an intergenerational program that we made to teach not just the youth, but also their families, because their families have an influence. It's not just the kids that are making food decisions every day, it's their families as well. And we wanted to foster collaboration. So we wanted to teach nutrition education, but also to kind of incorporate literacy, reading comprehension, math, some of these things that they were not truly able to absorb in their classes. And we wanted to connect that with environmental stewardship and them being able to understand how the foods that they eat relates to their bodies. So that was an incredible program that ran for about 2 months. And what we did, you can see here, is the kids were active in planting. We translated the planting to them learning about, the different types of food, learning about everything that I talked about, the soil health, the pollinators, how their food comes to be. And then we also had them, we were engaging them in actually eating. So it was the consumption part that was truly valuable here, because not only were they learning and absorbing information and recalling what they were learning about nutrition and in the environment and how to take care of the land, but they got to see this translated. And we incorporated things that we were growing in the garden, but also things that were from our local producers. And so not only did they learn how to prepare the foods, but they learned, were able to provide thoughts and their perceptions. And they got to try new flavors and things that they never experienced before. And so we were very mindful of understanding the types of foods because oftentimes we go in and say, hey, we're going to just make something easy. But we wanted this to be culturally relevant. So we took into account the different types of cultures that were in that community, and we asked them, what would you like to eat? What do you enjoy eating regularly? And we crafted these recipes by that. So each of the folks from that participated not only received recipes of what we prepared, but we also sent them home with groceries of everything that we prepared so that they could replicate that with their families afterwards. And that was very impactful because it helps to solidify and truly do the hard work of connecting with community and empowering them to sustain that over time. Now, we know that gardening for health research shows that there are several benefits, right? It can really lower the cortisol levels and really enhance mood and well being. But not just that, it helps you to get physically active. It helps you to get that movement in and foster the community belonging and social interaction, which translates into improved mental health. We also see here, this is me and my grandfather. Little short story. He is on dialysis for kidney disease, end-stage kidney failure. And he grew up as a farmer, but we use the garden as a space for not just bonding, but for him to share information and knowledge and wisdoms that he has obtained over time. And he shares that with me in the garden each time when we're out there. And so I would be remiss if I didn't say that, I showed you all the things that you can do if you garden, right? But there are barriers, yes. Lack of limited gardening knowledge. As you can see with my jars here, I didn't know that I needed drainage and all of that stuff there, but over time, I gained the skills necessary to grow more effectively and productively. Lack of time, competing responsibilities, hence why you can connect with community to share that burden. Where there's a will, there's a way. We don't have to do this alone. And then that also addresses the next point, which is insufficient access to land and tools and quality soil. So I highly recommend tapping into local workshops, your resources like this botanical garden, our state county extension agencies to learn exactly how to do this in a way where you're not wasting your time, your resources, and troubleshooting. And then start with something low maintenance like a container or a vertical garden. There are many different methods to actually coming into gardening. And lastly, on the community level, some of the barriers here is, lack of community involvement and leadership inclusion. So really, before going into a community, connect with them, right? This is really just establishing, building a relationship with the communities that you want to be a part of. It's like, friendships. You give and you take and you have to contribute. And so one of the things that kind of serves as a barrier for community garden is that, and also just some of these zoning regulations and local policies that tend to be restrictive. However, work with some of your local partners. I found that when you have champions and when you come together, more than one voice speaks louder than one voice sometimes, and it tends to be you're able to kind of move the needle just a bit more. And then seek partnerships with your local organizations, schools, and local businesses, and faith-based organizations that have a mission and a desire and a commitment to serve the community. So small steps that you can take is really commit to growing just one type, one thing, one nutrient-rich plant. These small actions that you take can lead to bigger changes, not just in nature, as you see, but also within yourself. I often say, a lot of folks say, but oh, I want to be, self-reliant. And I'm like, that is great. But a great way to not become self-reliant is to get overwhelmed from the start and then to lose your momentum. Start with one thing And you can see here, I've got my little rosemary plant. That's all you need is one, because I can guarantee it's going to be a gateway, and you're going to add cilantro, you're going to add a tomato plant over time. Join a local community garden, start a neighborhood, group, seed sharing, plant sharing, food sharing, to really build that community resilience and to protect that food diversity. And then lastly, be advocates, yes, for local food and soil policies. Connect with your community leaders, your local politicians, your local lobbyists, and join these food justice organizations, because believe it or not, I said that multiple voices is sometimes stronger than one voice, and it truly is. But your voice is needed, and it can drive change. Thank you guys so much. I welcome you to connect with me. You can find me on social media. I try to keep everything consistent, the Mocha Gardener, on everything. You can email me, and you can also, support with my book, and I talk about these concepts just a bit more. Thank you, guys.
We're a little bit past time, but we have time for some questions in the room if there are any. Otherwise, I think Ashlie may have some time to stick around afterward to connect with y'all. We've been monitoring the online chat and have not seen any questions come through. I'll add that if you want to learn how to become a gardener, get Ashley's book. Oh, we do have a question
I
here.
think one,
One thing we haven't talked about is farmers markets. And every week within a 30-mile radius, we have probably 6 or 7 farmers markets, including the one in Raleigh, but locally we have 3 or 4. And that's another place to get food diversity and sometimes very organic food.
Absolutely. And I think, Orange County is really great for bringing in, it's really a kind of a model for supporting local producers and creating a space and an opportunity, mostly for them to be, their livelihoods to be supported in connecting them with consumers. So yes, I think, the Carborough's Farmers Market is hustling and bustling every Saturday morning. I'm going there on this Saturday. But that's a great example of being able to tap into these local producers to get the nutritious foods that you need. Yes.
Will you talk a little more about vertical gardening? So many of us living in urban spaces don't have a lot of room. What would be appropriate for that? How do you get started?
Yeah. So you've got a lot of options, right? Believe it or not, I know you're probably like, what, Ashlie? What options? One thing, and this is not a plug, but there are just some vertical units. I think they're online. I think Greenstock has some really great vertical units. I use 3 of them. And the reason why vertical gardening is great to use is because it's compact. You can typically put it in a small space, and depending on like how it's configured, you can grow multiple plants all in one space. But it's also ergonomically just great. If you have limitations to being able to bend over, and currently I do, you're able to max or utilize this space that is often underused, which is the vertical space. We're used to growing here, but you can grow here as well. So there's a lot of benefits on how you can actually utilize your vertical space. I recommend, these stacking containers if you can. Um, depending on like what your weight capacity is and what you can lift, can determine exactly which option is best for you. Utilizing pots, you don't necessarily have to grow, straight up like this, but pots go a long way. It's quick. You can take it down if places that you're at is temporary, or if you just want to move things around and follow the sun, pots are a great option. I also use something called pallets. And if you want to be creative and you have the brain cells to kind of figure it out, I talk about it in my book as well, how we've done that. But the thing about pallets is that not every pallet is produced the same way or processed the same way. So you want to make sure that whatever you use, that it's either the plastic or the wood has not been treated with something toxic that is going to impact your soil health, right? So the pallets that we used were solely heat treated. It did not have any type of like, I think it was bromine that was added to it to treat the wood from, breaking down. We ultimately knew that we weren't going to have that long term, but we were able to have it for about 3 years, and that served its purpose. So those are options that you can look into. Also, something to be mindful of is if you're growing in containers, you're probably going to have to water it just a bit more. But that gives you time to get connected with your plants, to look at them, to not neglect them. But it's definitely a great option if you do not have a lot of resources to build something. There are many options out there.
The Drakeford Library Complex is trying to start a seed library.
Mm.
So, and I think they could probably use some mentoring and supports for that project. So the Drakeford Library is, what's the address over there on
The new Carver.
the new Carborough Public Library? South, I guess it is South Greensboro. Thanks.
I'm so glad you brought that up because that's another place that you can tap into. A lot of folks don't know your local libraries. Many of them have seeds that you can, go and collect. I'm one to actually share some other seeds as well. And it's really, you see just a lot of gardeners around the area maintaining that seed library at these local gardens. So check out your library, ask if they have that option. But that is a fantastic way to really increase access to seeds that would typically be inaccessible, especially because you have to go online or go into a store. That's a really great option to get it affordably, if not for free.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, think of oh.
I just wanted to ask you guys, how many people here have some kind of raised beds, either just plastic lumber or, so just a few of us? So the rest of you are gardening in on the
Yeah, they
land?
may actually have a lot of dirt. Some of us don't.
Because with the Triassic Basin soil, which is the white clay,
Yeah.
the only way I've been able to garden for 34 years here has been raised beds with amendments, lots of
amendments.
right, sand, gravel, mulch,
The soil is so
compost,
acidic, it
manure.
comes up and breaks down the amendments that you put in, so you have to keep adding.
And I think that that's what's interesting about the Piedmont region, right? Is that we've got different types. Our soil composition varies from, one place in your yard to another place in your yard. And I think it's a very helpful resource that I like to tap into is through the extension agency of getting soil tests. I like to get soil tests because it helps me to not have to estimate or guesstimate exactly what my soil needs and exactly what is missing. So you, depending on the time of year, you can actually just take a sample, send it off, and it's free. But if you're in the peak season, it'll cost a few bucks for you to actually get your soil analyzed. But that is helpful to understand that foundation that you're putting your plants in, whether you're growing in the ground or even in your raised beds. Soil is soil, and it's going to happen, or in either way, you have to understand how to amend it. It just gives you a head start with a little bit more information for you to amend in a more informed way. Thank you.
Ashley, thank you so much for joining us today and instilling this wisdom on us. It's clear that you've gone through the trials of learning all this knowledge, and we thank you so much for putting that into a book and then sharing that with audiences for years to come.
Thank you.
So we hope to have you back and teach us more as you learn more. But till then, we thank you all again for joining us today. Recording should be online within about a week or so. So feel free to review anything you missed or want to review. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.